What's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. As always, I'm your co-host, Donovan Quick, and a lot of us Dolphins fans, including myself, to a certain extent, are concerned about the possibility of Chris Grier making desperate moves in order to save his job, further just destroying the Dolphins' chances of competing over the next few years. And to that, I have to give my credit to Omar Kelly, because I didn't really notice it until he pointed it out. He hasn't really made desperate moves over his tenure as GM. Someone pointed out, and other people agreed with him, that Bradley Chubb was a desperate move. And once again, credit to Omar Kelly. He pointed this out to me, that Bradley Chubb, meanwhile, that was a bigger move that we gave up a first round pick for. We did have, I think it was like a third and fourth round swap. We had we offloaded Chase Edmonds and his bad contract, so we were able to get that fixed there. And then at the time, we were really competing. Like, people forget, at that point in time, the Dolphins were first place in the East. Like, we were competing, and not only a chance to win the division, but to go out there and win playoff games. That was the mentality. And we wanted to add to our edge rushing, because we didn't really have any edge rushers. So that's what we did. We brought in Bradley Chubb. And look, he helped us out a little bit. He did have a great season last year before tearing his ACL. Obviously, he didn't play this past year, but that just is what it is. He tore his ACL late in the season. It wasn't a reality that he was going to be coming back unless we were in playoff contention. Just was what it was. It just is what it is. That being said, at that time, still, we had an extra first-round pick. That first-round pick ended up getting deducted because the NFL decided that we were tampering with Tom Brady and took our first-round pick that year and our third-round pick last year. So we lost our first-round pick because of that, and that we didn't know that when trading for Bradley Chubb. Do I think that would have impacted the trade, knowing that we only had that was our only first round pick versus having two first rounders and trading one of them? Yeah, I do think that impacts it. I do think that impacts the trade greatly. I do. I really do. So that being said, I don't really count that as a desperate move. And look, I am still concerned about him trying to do something desperate, like bringing in some old offensive guard, paying him way too much money over the next 3 years to have him come in and be terrible. I am concerned about that. I am concerned about him trying to sign these deals that, and he's been fairly good with his contracts. I will say that, as far as like having outs on them and having the flexibility in them to be restructured to gain a lot more cap space. So he's done a really good job with that. But he might go and overpay some bad players that just don't contribute and don't play good because they're old or injury prone or whatever else there is. Or he might reach in the draft, and instead of going with Malachi Starks at 13, a safety, he goes and reaches for an offensive lineman that has a day 2 grade just because the Dolphins fans want him to have a guard. Like, if Will Campbell is there, I'm taking Will Campbell. If there's a couple of other guys that I think can play guard in the league, that are, high first round picks, I'm taking them there. If those guys are all gone, I'm probably taking Malachi Starks if he's there. That's just me. But the Dolphins and Chris Grier, being that they know that this is their last year to get things right. If we don't make the playoffs, they're gone. If we don't win a playoff game, depending on the fashion that we don't win it in, if we get blown out, they're gone. If we lose in a close one, they're probably staying. If we win, they're definitely staying. So they're in desperation mode right now. And yes, it might hurt the Dolphins' future, but we have to have the mentality of let them work. Let Because if you don't trust Chris Grier, which I don't either, I made a video on this not too long ago. You have to trust Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel has coached the crap out of this team. Look, this roster last year was terrible. Arguably worse than the roster that we had in 2019, with the exception of we had a few star players. The depth was way worse than what we had in 2019. Way worse. And that was a tank year. That was also a year that we brought in a bunch of guys that were hungry and wanted to sit there and try to make plays. And they were coached up. These guys were coached up. And they played well for the most part. Except offensive line. Offensive line was terrible. But we're not getting to that just yet. That being said, I still have my concerns. You should too. But Mike McDaniel, he's going to help him draft. He's going to tell him, look, this guy does or does not fit my run scheme that I need in order for this offense to be successful. Because if this offense is not successful with the amount of money that we have poured into it, then this team is a failure. Because the defense last year with Jalen Ramsey and Zach Sealer and Calais Campbell, those are the only three guys that really played most of the year that were consistent and good. With those three guys, defense played pretty well. Finished top 10 in most categories. Besides sacks. That was it. That was the only thing that we didn't get done was sacks. And we had no edge rushers. Bradley Chubb, Jalen Phillips, out. Chop Robinson finally started getting going towards the end of the year. But, bro, we had no one. And the defense played well. Offense, given we didn't have Tua for half the year, but we had Tyreek Hill, we have Jalen Waddle, we have Achane, we had Mostert. Mostert coming off a 20 touchdown season, Achane coming off of a double-digit touchdown season where he had limited snaps. You had Tyreek Hill coming off an 1,800-yard season. Jalen Waddle coming off a 1,300 yards. He only had 1,000 yards last year. But yeah, because he was injured. You have the playmakers there. I know your offensive line was bad, but you have to find ways. And we moved the ball somewhat when Tua was in there, but we just did not at all when he was not in there. So, that being said, I'm trusting Mike McDaniel to make the right calls on the people that he wants to bring in and develop, and that just is what it is. Because if I don't trust Mike McDaniel, then I'm going to go crazy, and everybody else is too. And at this point, it just is what it is. I know I've said it over and over and over again. It just is what it is. There's nothing that we can do about it. But we have to sit here and watch. And I'm going to choose to trust Mike McDaniel and criticize Chris Grier. If you guys want to criticize both or have hope in both, that's all you. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Deuces.